Greetings everyone, and welcome back to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Anthony here, and welcome to an audio recap from our Running with the Herd series, where we look back at the most recent home game for the Basingstoke Bison. This one takes us back to Saturday the 25th of March for the Basingstoke Bison against the Leeds Knights. Final score, Basingstoke Bison 2, Leeds Knights 4. Goals for the Bison coming from George Norcliffe and Gail Lebuele with a power play goal, and goals for the Leeds Knights 2 for Finn Braden, 1 for Zach Brooks and 1 for Kieran Brown. Leeds are good. We've said it before quite a bit across this season, whether it's on this website or on Twitter or everybody and their mother who's even watched the National League for more than a couple of moments. Leeds are good. They're champions for a reason, and you can see why from this game. Guys down, Harrison Walker started in net after an emotional cup final the day before. And with the Bison and the Knights playing back-to-back, it was very easy to see what Leeds were trying to do in this game, and that was recover and conserve a bit of energy. Having come incredibly close on that Friday night to winning back the cup after a disaster of a first leg with all things considered, Leeds went into the second leg of the cup final 6-0 down and won on the night, but not by enough. They came into Basingstoke and almost to a point did what they had to do. There was a feeling, certainly amongst a few people that I spoke to and myself, that when it got to the 40-minute mark, that the Knights were a bit sort of stuck in second gear. Why were the Bison hanging around as much as they were? It was 1-1 after 40 minutes, and the Knights should have been out of sight. And now a large chunk of this was due in part to Jordan Lauday having an absolutely spectacular game in net for the Bison, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But all things considered, the Bison had 19 shots through 3 periods, which isn't very good. The Knights had more shots than that in the third. But the Knights, good teams find a way. Peppering the Bison net, being faced with a goalkeeper standing on his head, and the Knights just waited and waited for that crucial moment, and they took the mistake and took it away from the Bison again. Very similar to the first game in Leeds this year, the Knights won, where Grant Cooper scored with about 5 minutes to go, and the Bison had been hanging around again and then just got killed at the death. Same here. A mistake by Liam Morris for the turnover. Hayward to Brown. Brown to Braden. 3-2. The fourth was almost academic at that point. There wasn't any coming back from it. And yet, from a Bison perspective, I was in two minds. There's no shame in losing to Leeds. Anybody upset about losing to the Knights across the course of this season, that's wasted energy to a point, but the Bison could have won this. Now, obviously, Sunday night's game, the Knights win by 6-2, and that's, not a great result for anybody, but the Bison keep hanging around when they play the Knights, especially in Basingstoke. But there seems to always be that moment, that mistake that kills them. And it's always right at the very end. And this is why Leeds are champions. It's why Telford were champions. Pre- and post-pandemic. The relentlessness. The 60-minute game. To beat the Leeds Knights, the Basingstoke Bison have to be perfect. Pitch perfect. From minute 1 to minute 60. They cannot have a moment's peace or they will lose. 55 minutes of a game here. And Leeds couldn't beat them. 60 they found a way. And the frustrating thing for the Bison is they find a way to play for 60 minutes. They could beat this side. And it might be ugly. And it might have a shot count that resembles this one, where they barely make it out of the teens, or not at all. But if the Bison can find a way, there is a way to beat Leeds. They're only human. Now, ultimately, only having 20 shots at home is either a game plan or a terrible night. And it felt a little bit like they were trying to game plan this. They knew they were playing a Leeds side that was tired from the night before, but the one that would obviously want to win, to make a point, having lost the cup the night before. So what did the Bison do? They didn't really go for a complete shutdown, because there's no point. Trying to stop Leeds scoring It's a zero-sum game. There's no point. Not even Peterborough knew that they would shut the Knights out completely, but they knew if they shut them down enough, they would win the tie on aggregate. For the Bison, they kind of had a similar-ish kind of approach. Loat, traditionally a better keeper when he's busy, was allowed to see the puck and was allowed to make saves, combined with the fact that he revels, it seems, in being in the shooting gallery. He gave up the rebounds, the Bison cleared. It seemed to work for the most part. And then, against the netminder who, with all due respect to Harrison Walker, isn't Sam Gospel, and wasn't seeing a ton of shots, they took their chances and were clinical when they needed to be. George Norcliffe's goal was the classic Norcliffe move, up the left wing, cut to the net, find the gap as the pads start coming together, job done. And Gael Lebuele's goal was very well taken. A broken play saw Marcel Balach spin on a sixpence to give it to Lebuele, who beat Walker over the glove. A save that Gospel might have made, but he might not have done. The Bison and the Knights know that this may not be the last time they see each other before 2022-23 comes to an end. And this game was a feeling out process. Certainly this Saturday game, no Mac Howlett, no Gospel, lots of ice time for Finn Braden, who, it should be said, is what a prospect this young man is. And it would not surprise any of us next year to see him full time in a Knights jersey. But this wasn't the Leeds Knights you're going to get in the playoffs. Leeds' playoff run last year, if you all remember, was a damp squib. 21-22 saw the Knights come racing out of the gate in the league season to kind of fall away as the season went on, and by the time they got to the playoffs, they'd had a complete mental block, to then be greeted with this 22-23 variation of the Knights, with Ryan Aldrich at the helm, having built a roster that is the youngest in the league. Remember and let that one sink in, everybody. Ryan Aldrich's team are the youngest on average in the division, and they won it. It's a terrifying prospect to have to try and face up against. Ultimately, it was a decent game of hockey. It was alright. Would have been nice to win it. And like I say, there's a part of me that thinks if the Bison can find a way, they can win it. If they face the Knights in the playoffs, it's not going to be the Knights of last year. There is no mental gap. They had their brain fart when they lost 6-0 in Peterborough. Can they have another one in the playoffs? Remains to be seen. But the Bison will need to have a game plan. It might be very similar to the one that they executed against the Knights on this night. Didn't go quite so well on the Sunday, obviously. The problem is that it feels like the Herd will have had to show their hand a bit. The Bison still need results. They can still finish 7th, and they will face MK, and they will face either MK or Peterborough as a result if they do, going into the final 2 games of the season, where the Herd will play back-to-back against Sheffield. Whatever happens, though, the Bison need to be prepared. I said last week that Ashley Tate needed to have a game plan for all 3 teams, because without one, the Bison don't make Coventry. The Herd have not had a good enough season to freewheel it into the playoffs. 60-minute game, which has been a struggle this year. Sticking to the game plan, which has been a struggle this year. And you can make all the jokes you want. The league is the most coveted prize in British hockey. That just is the way it is. But the playoffs mean something. And if the Bison can find a way to be perfect for 4 games, just 4 games, there's a surprise in the offing here. However, they have got to do it. And they've got to do it 1 game at a time. On this night, they didn't do it. If they want their season to be extended by a week, they're going to need to do it. For Leeds, they're the odds-on favourites, by a mile. Rightly so. I do wonder who they want in the playoffs, and whether it'll be the same as who they get in the playoffs. bannersonthewall.wordpress.com is the website. Thank you for visiting as always. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. If you search Banners on the Wall on any of those platforms, you will find where we are. The last weekend of the regular season is upon us. The marathon is over, nearly, and the sprint is nearly on. Stay safe and so long till next time.